Hi, this is Mr. Moss, and in this video, we're going to be talking about bar models. This is an introduction. We're going to be using bar models to solve some addition and subtraction word problems. So to get us started, let's take a look at what a model is. In math, a model is anything that represents numbers or something that you're doing with numbers. So let's say I took an equation that should be pretty simple for many of us. 3 plus 2 equals 5. That's something that we've learned how to do since we were really young. So in this particular example, we need to draw a model. Well, right now, this is a model, first of all. I'm showing 3. I'm showing that this symbol here represents that I'm adding it to this amount, which is 2, giving me a total of 5. Or 3 plus 2 equals 5. I can model it with tally marks. I can model it with dots. I can model it in so many different ways, but all of these are models. So let's take a look now. We said that we're starting off, though, talking about drawing a bar model. And a bar model is simply another way of being able to represent something. So let's take a look at this particular problem right here. Mary had 5 computers. Elizabeth had 3 computers. How many did they have in all? This is a pretty simple problem. They're simple numbers that we're adding up here. 5 computers plus 3 more computers equals 8 computers. So that's something we know how to do. We can do that as mental math. The reason why we're starting off with these simple problems is that right now we're focusing more on the process of how we can add these and how we can draw a model in order to add them, not on the actual computation itself. So first thing I'm going to do, I have Mary with 5 computers, Elizabeth with 3 computers. So let me figure out how I'm going to draw that out. The first thing I'm always going to do is begin with a line going down my page. This is, I'm going to warn you, families, if you're watching this, this is part of that new funky math that people talk about and that they get a little worried about sometimes. But I think once you see this, you're going to find out that it's a really helpful tool for a lot of students. So we've got this vertical line, and I know that I've got Mary and Elizabeth, and each of them have some computers. Mary has 5 computers, so I'm going to draw a bar. That's why we call it a bar model. Mary with her 5 computers, and Elizabeth with her 3 computers. So I'm going to draw that bar a bit smaller. It's not important to get it exactly spaced correctly. I don't have to measure it or anything, but it's my way of seeing that I've got Mary with her 5 computers and Elizabeth with a few fewer, the bar is smaller, 3 computers. And I'm looking at how many computers did they have in all. This is telling me that I'm looking at addition. Then I'm going to be figuring out the total amount. And anytime in a bar model we're trying to figure out the total, we draw a brace here on the side and we look at the total amount. So we don't yet know the total amount. We're going to have to add it up. 5 plus 3, that's telling me that my total is going to be 8. But that brace on the side is showing me that I'm talking about the entire amount here that I'm going to add together. Now let's compare that problem to a similar one. In this instance, Mary and Elizabeth have 5 computers. Mary has 5 computers. Elizabeth has 3 computers. How many more computers did Mary have? So this problem is a little bit different. When I see the word how many more did Mary have, that's showing me that I'm looking at the difference between those two numbers. And whenever I see the word difference, I'm going to be using subtraction. So in this particular instance, I'm going to start the exact same way. I'm going to draw that vertical line just like before. I'm still talking about Mary and I'm still talking about Elizabeth. But now what I need to do is draw those models just like it did before, showing me that there's 5 and showing me that there's 3. But this time, I'm looking to find the difference between the two amounts right here. I'm looking to see how many more computers Mary had. That more right here is this space right over here. The difference between this quantity and this quantity. It's right over here. So I'm going to draw my brace instead of the side like we did before. I'm going to draw my brace right over here to show that this is the amount that I need to figure out. I need to figure out the difference between 5 and 3. And again, for a lot of students, that's going to be some simple mental math right there. 5 minus 3 tells us that our answer is going to be 2. All right? So just looking at these two starters as an example, if we're looking at addition, we're putting a big brace here off to the side to show the total amount. But if we're looking at subtraction, we're going to find the amount that we're trying to identify, that difference, and we're going to put the brace right over there to identify it. Let's take a look at another example. We have Jody and Donna, and they went to 2 different conferences. They had to fly 300 miles for the first conference and 550 miles for the second. How far did they fly in all? So in this particular problem, I'm going to again draw this. Now, a lot of students might think that we're going to begin by labeling these as J and D, because after all, we've got 2 names right over here. But that's not correct. In this particular problem, we're not looking at comparing how many Jody had and how far Donna had. Instead, we're looking at 2 different trips. So it's really important to know what it is that you're labeling. We had 1 conference, the first conference, and then we also had the second conference. So I'm just going to label these maybe first and second. You can label them 1 and 2, whatever you want here. So for the first conference, I know that they had to fly 300 miles. And for the second conference, they had to fly further. They had to fly 550 miles. So right now, we're looking at how many miles they flew in all. Again, that's telling me that I'm using my addition here. So I'm going to draw my brace on the side to tell me that I need to figure out the total amount of both of those flights. 550 plus 300, and that's going to give me a total of 850. And it's totally okay to do the math out, to write on a piece of scrap paper or on the side of your paper here, 550 plus 300. I'm not telling you that you can't do that. I'm saying that this model here helps you to keep your work organized so that you understand, wait, am I adding, am I subtracting? Again, at this stage, that's a pretty simple thing to figure out. But as the year gets, as we get further into the year, we're going to be using model drawing for more sophisticated problems, and it won't be as obvious. Let's take a look at this problem. We've got Bob here, and Bob has 27 iPads, 42 Chromebooks, and 30 Samsung tablets. How many fewer tablets did he have than Chromebooks? So once again, same idea. We're starting with that line. And we're going to take a look at the 27 iPads. Just going to draw an I there. And we know that he has 27. And we know that there's 42 Chromebooks. I'm going to put a C here. And that's a much bigger amount. Don't stress about whether it's the exact right size, or maybe it should have gone to here or it should have stopped here. The idea is that 42 is bigger than 27, and I've shown that. And then lastly, we've got those Samsung tablets, and we're looking at about 30. So I have to make it bigger than my 27, but smaller than my 42. So we'll just go here. That's probably a little too big, but that's okay. 30 tablets here. So I've got here 27, 42, and 30. I'm going to reread my problem, which is a really great strategy to figure out what I need to do. How many fewer tablets did he have than Chromebooks? So I'm looking at those Samsung tablets. They're 30 compared to the Chromebooks where there are 42. By the way, I could have reworded that and said how many more Chromebooks does he have than tablets. It's the same idea right there. So again, I'm looking at the difference between these two. It tells me that I'm subtracting. 42 is this amount right over here. 30 is right here. I'm looking to find the difference between 42 and 30. And we know that that's a difference of 12 devices. And again, it's totally okay to do the math out and to write down 42 minus 30. Let's take a look at 2 more quick problems. Here's one. Amy had 16 meetings this week, which is 4 more than last week. How many meetings did she have last week? So this is a slightly different problem, but I'm going to set up the exact same way, okay? We've got this week and last week, so I can either put a T and an L for this week and last week. I'm just going to do week 1 and week 2 to make it simple. So we know that she had 16 meetings this week. So I'm going to just draw that out. Week 2, that's this week. 16 meetings. Okay. So I know that that's 4 more than last week. So last week, I must have had a smaller number. So I'm just going to draw a box. I don't know exactly how big to make it. That's the amount that I have to figure out. How many meetings she had last week. That's week number 1. We're not sure. But I know that this week, she had 4 more meetings than last week. So I'm going to draw my brace right over here to show that the difference between the two, this time we know the difference, it's 4. So wait, she had 16 meetings this week. That's 4 more than last week. So I'm going to count back. I'm going to use subtraction. 16 minus 4. That's going to help me to figure out that last week she had a total of 12 meetings right there. Actually, I should really put the 12 inside the box. So sometimes you know the difference, you're trying to figure out the quantity. Let's take a look at one final problem. Piney. Piney has 38 books. A friend came and gave him 12 more. How many books does Piney have now? So once again, we're starting off here with our vertical line. And now I'm going to show you a few different ways that you could solve this one. One obvious way would be, let's see, we know that Piney started off with 38, and then suddenly he came up with a new amount. He got more books. So I'm just going to call that now and later maybe, or first and after, before and after. Could be either way. Let's in fact do that. I don't want to say now. Let's call that before and after. So before, we knew that Piney had 38 books. But then a friend came and gave him 12 more. So he still had those original 38 books, right? But now somebody gave him 12 more books to add to that mix. And I need to figure out how many books Piney now has. So in this case, I'm going to look to add up this amount right over here. The 38 books that he started with and the 12 books that came after. So I'm going to do my math right over here. 38 plus 12. If you could do it in mental math, that's totally fine. And I'm left with a total of 50 books that Piney now has. You may not need to draw it out that way, though. You might just look at this and say, okay, Piney has his books. We'll represent that with a B. He started off with the 38 books, and then we added on 12 more. What's our total here? You may realize that what I'm drawing here is the exact same thing as the bottom half of our last example. It's the same idea. You may not need that before. Everyone can do it their own way, but still we're getting a total of 50 books. So in these activities, you were able to see that we can use model drawing as a way to solve addition and subtraction word problems. And maybe this is helpful for you. Maybe you could have done it on your own. But learning how to draw these models is helpful for when it comes time for you to use this strategy to solve more sophisticated, complicated word problems. This has been Mr. Moss giving you an introduction to bar models. Thanks so much.